I will draw your face.
Welcome back to another tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about coloring hair. I get a lot of questions about hair. I'm not sure why, because hair is like one of the easiest things to draw, and I don't know why everybody complains about it. So we are using my last drawing, which is Queen Herby, as a reference, and some of it is sped up, but I tried to not go crazy with the time lapses. Anyways, here I am coloring the skin for where the hair is. I think I talked about this in the last tutorial, so I'm not gonna repeat that. I'm not about to do that. So let's just skip forward a little bit and start the hair. So here's where I add the shadows of some of the hair, and I added really fine hairs where the hairline is. And this is using the French gray and the burnt ochre and some orange. For black hair, sometimes I start out with red and green and go over it with black, or I start out with orange and indigo blue and then go over it with black to give the black hair some depth. So here's me using black for the darkest parts of the hair, because I'm trying to give the illusion that there's like strands of hair layered on top of that. So I start out with the darkest color first when it comes to hair, and then I'll go over it with the blue and the orange. I think I started with orange first. Yeah, okay, so I started with orange first, orange strands, and then I go over it with blue. And then trying to think. It's been a while since I colored black hair, so I'm trying to remember what I did for this one. Okay, so yeah, I guess I kind of went over some of the areas with orange strands. So this gives the black hair depth. When you're coloring realistic pictures of people, some things to keep in mind is to not use just plain black for anything. You always want to mix it with something to make it more of a natural black. Whether it be hair, shadows, eyebrows, eyeliner, shadows on the lips, nostrils, wherever. And for red, what I normally do is I use this, I use the grass green to start out with to make the red more vibrant and to make it a little bit darker. This also gives the red depth. So I use red, and then I use permanent red for this part. I use the grass green, and then I use I think it's called Perylene brown, but it's really, really dark red. So I'll use that, and then I usually have to get a really sharp white pencil and an X-Acto knife, and I will start scraping away at the strands of hair. And then I fill that area in with white pencil, and then go over it with the red to make so it sets some of the hair back in space, but it brings the other hair forward when you add light to it. Here I am adding blue. I believe what I was trying to do with this piece is I was trying to do like half red and half black hair. I kind of got the idea from the Queen of Hearts, but I also got the idea from this the singer of the band New Year's Day. Her name is Ash Costello, and she has half red and half black hair. So I was trying to do that, but I was trying to put it in a braid, so that was kind of challenging. So here I am using a red over white, and I'm adding some green in. So I'll do I'll try to do the base layers first for the braid, and then I'll go back and start adding in individual strands of color. It's important to have relatively sharp pencils for this, especially when you get towards the end of drawing the hair, when you have to add in strands, individual strands of hair. So keep that in mind. So here it is sped up a little bit. This is the black hair, and here I'm going back in with the Perylene brown, which is the really dark burgundy red. I went ahead and started adding some of the strands of hair with the X-Acto knife. I'm sorry I don't have a whole lot of shots of that, but my hair was in the way for a lot of it, so I had to edit a lot of that out. You wouldn't be able to see much. So there's the white, or I'll use the buff titanium, and then I'll try and draw it in a little bit of a different direction with the X-Acto knife, and that way it looks like the hair is just kind of going in the same general direction, but they're not all exactly the same. And then with the red, sometimes I'll go and I'll add in some of the black strands of hair to make it look a little bit more natural. Also, what I do to add highlights to hair instead of white is I'll add a really, really pale gray or like a really pale blue, or I'll add a little bit of pink to make some of the strands a little bit brighter and set them away from the hair that's further back. I really like the Caran D'Ache red pencil because it's really, really high in pigment. It's probably the most pigmented. Those are the most pigmented pencils that I've ever used, especially the reds. And basically just doing the same thing over and over again until the hair looks the way I want. And then when I add highlights to black hair, I will usually add a little bit of gray, but I won't make the whole strand gray. I'll darken it a little bit to make it look a little bit more dimensional. So I'll use like the pale blue or really, really light gray or white and start adding some of the strands in, like I am in this section. And that way it doesn't look like there's just a big black splotch on her hair. You can actually see the difference between the strands of hair. So I am drawing it in different directions. When it comes to like really dark hair, if you want to start getting it changing directions of hair, just work in one section at a time. Make sure that, again, your pencils are really, really sharp. That way you can get really thin highlights, and that way the hair doesn't really look too much like it's pencil lines. And when I'm drawing the hair near the hairline where it's the thinnest, I will draw from the hair towards the hairline in that direction, and that way the lines are a lot finer. Here's another section where I'm using the grass green because I'm trying to bring some of the red hair towards the hairline because I didn't add red there at this point. You just have to follow the direction of the hair and just keep doing that to cover the white paper. And then I did go back in with black over the green, and that's the hair that's further back. So that the hair doesn't need as much detail, that you can leave it as a small chunk of black. And then you can maybe go over it with a few strands in a different direction. That would probably be best. So here's where I went in a different direction with the X-Acto knife and added some strands on top of the black. And then I'm bringing the black hair back towards the hairline. Here's a little bit more of me working on the braid. I had to speed it up a little bit because you kind of get the idea. I added black in some areas, I added green in some areas. For some of the black, what I did was I used black and then indigo blue, and then I went over it with that Perylene brown, just to kind of make it look like the red hair is mixed in with the black hair. So hair really is not that complicated. You just have to practice and make sure you keep your pencils really sharp. It is a little bit, it's a little time consuming. It definitely takes a long time to do hair, I guess, depending on how much hair you're coloring. This didn't take that long because it's just one braid, and I put a crown on her and I didn't have to color the rest of the hair in. You can sort of see some of the strands that I added in. There's a little bit of red there. For those, I always make sure the pencil's really, really sharp. That way it looks like real hair. And then here's me more with the X-Acto knife again. And the white pencil. And this is where I was using some of the blue on the black hair to give it a little bit of sheen. And sometimes for the red, I won't color the entire section green. I'll just color like maybe the outside part and a few strands green. And that way when you go over it with red, it looks like it's just a darker red. Definitely an easy way to get dark red without putting in too much effort. And it looks a little bit more like a natural red, and like not really a natural red, but more of a realistic one, like a hair color you would actually see in life. It doesn't look quite as artificial as it would if you didn't use any green. It's always good to make sure you have a lot of depth in your colors, so don't just use blue by itself if you're using blue, don't just use red by itself if you're using red. It's good to incorporate other colors in, so that way you have a better range of things, and it helps things get set back in space, therefore giving you a more realistic appearance. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to making more tutorials on Patreon. Leave a comment below if you have an idea about my next tutorial, and I'll see you next time.
I'm feeling so hollow, don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living in shadow, don't you know? Don't you know? I fell for fool's gold, I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's